The verdict is in for the creator of the mixing service, Tornado Cash. And unfortunately, it sets a very dangerous precedent. Let's dive into this. Welcome back, everyone. Let's dive into this because it is definitely not a good thing. And it does provide, unfortunately, this ruling does provide ammo for the government agencies that want to push their KYC AML rhetoric to its, to its furthest extent. Anyways, let's dive into it. Developer of Tornado Cash found guilty of money laundering in the Netherlands. Keep in mind, this person, the developer of this software, did not actually launder any money, okay? And this is why something like this is so dangerous. Despite Tornado Cash being a non-custodial crypto mixing protocol wherein funds passing through the platform are not held or controlled by it, Pertsev has been sentenced to 5 years and 4 months in prison for allegedly laundering a staggering $1.2 billion worth of illicit assets. Now, we're going to go take a look in a minute at how the banks get treated when they get caught in quotation marks, laundering money. Its association with illicit activities led to its blacklisting by the United States government, precipitating Pertsev's legal woes. The verdict not only has immediate ramifications for Pertsev, but also serves as a cautionary tale. That right there, people, is the point, okay? Because this has nothing to do with my safety, your safety. This has nothing to do with combating terrorism or essentially trying to end things like CP. No, not at all. Those reasons will be given, right, in order to make the argument that if you are against any rules and regulations like this, well, then you're obviously a deviant and you're obviously a danger to society. But make no mistake, KYC AML laws have nothing to do with our safety or any of that. What it has to do with is maintaining the moat and maintaining control of the financial system, which it raises pertinent questions about the responsibility and liability of open source code developers in the realm of decentralized finance. Now, so if a person who develops code and then this code then gets used, quote unquote, in a malicious way, should that person be responsible? Now, if it is the case that that person is responsible, then unfortunately, every single company that has ever manufactured anything that has ever been indirectly used as a weapon or as a way to perform a malicious act, including, a fork or a knife or something like that, well, then every single one of those corporations should be liable, but yet they aren't. It's specifically these people that are liable, and the reason is because people and businesses, coders that are creating this malicious code, see what they're doing is that they're disrupting the bankers' control, the central bankers' control, and they're disrupting their moat. That is not how this game works, okay? The central bankers are the intelligent architects, okay? And we're not going to subvert their power, okay? So that's why these people doing these things, they need to be made an example of, right? Samurai will need to be made an example of. This developer, Pertsev, he's going to need to, right? They're going to need to make an example out of him as well. While developers typically have no direct control over the use of their code, this verdict sets a precedent that could have far-reaching implications for the broader developer community. Exactly. See, this has nothing to do with preventing any kind of illegal or illicit activity. What it has to do with is making sure that you understand your place in the pecking order, and your place is down. Our place is at the bottom, being told what to do and making sure that the benevolent central banking architects are above us, ruling, making sure that we don't hurt ourselves. I've covered this many times before, but I think it's really important. So we just saw how Pertsev was treated, right? For what he did was write code, right, that allowed for a mixing service. That's all he did was write code. He did not actually launder any funds. And he's getting 5 years in jail. Now, let's take a look at the people who didn't write the code, who did actively launder the funds. And let's see how they got treated. Keep in mind, they're part of the big club that you and I aren't in. So their situation might seem that might be a little bit different what happened to them. So here we go, guys, the 5 biggest money laundering scandals. So money laundering is one of the largest crimes the global economy has been dealing with for centuries, and it is growing. According to the IMF, right? Of course, the money laundering rate is between 2 to 5% of GDP. This ratio corresponds to an enormous amount of the world's total money. For this reason, money laundering has serious negative socioeconomic consequences. No, it doesn't. Really, what it does is it creates a scenario where the banks are not at the center of control, okay? Because really, at the end of the day, sending the money isn't the problem. It's the crime that is committed with money. But you see, by going and hobbling the rails, you're able to keep the entire system monitored and under your control, which is the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal has nothing to do with crime. It has nothing to do with it, which, as you'll see, because these banks, these institutions, you'll notice one pattern. They all pay to play and nobody goes to jail. Unlike the little peons, right? Unlike the Tornado Cash people, unlike the samurais, right? Those people, us, the little guys, we go to jail because that's the lesson that needs to be learned. Okay? The lesson that needs to be learned is that if you're not in the big club, you go to jail. You don't get to pay to play. First one, Wachovia Bank, founded June 16th, 1879. As Wachovia Bank had become one of the biggest financial services companies in the United States. In April 2006, Mexican military soldiers found 128 safes worth $100 million filled with 5.7 tons of coke on a newly arrived jet in the port city of Ciudad del Carmen. 22-month study by agents of the DEA, IRS, and others found that the smugglers bought the plane with the money they laundered through Wachovia between 2004 and 2007. The investigation revealed that billions of dollars of wire transfers, travelers' checks, and bulk cash shipments were transferred to Wachovia accounts through Mexican exchanges. When this money laundering scandal emerged, Wachovia escaped persecution by paying a $160 million fine and promising to increase AML procedures. Rules for thee and not for me. Next up, Standard Chartered. Now, before we get into Standard Chartered, just keep the number in your mind of what the Tornado Cash mixer supposedly laundered, right? $1.2 billion of illicit assets, right? Keep that number in mind, the 1.2 billion. So say hello to Standard Chartered Bank. 2004, Standard Chartered Bank had some problems with the Federal Reserve and the New York regulator due to the lack of AML compliance programs. During 2005-2006, the bank broke sanctions against Iran by ignoring regulatory agreements and working with Iranians. Standard Chartered was penalized $670 million in 2012 for its violations, but the fine had little effect on stopping its illegal practice. Oh, no way. No, really? I thought the fines for sure worked. In 2012, Standard Chartered was accused by New York's Department of Financial Services, DFS, of the Iranian government's failures in anti-money laundering controls that helped clear the U.S. regulations for $265 billion. The UK and US authorities fined Standard Chartered a total of $1.1 billion. That's right. The fine that Standard Chartered had to pay is essentially just over the $1.2 billion that Tornado Cash is being accused of laundering. Okay, that was their fine. That was Standard Chartered Bank's fine. Anyways, all right, Danske Bank. All right, so Danske dates back to 1871. The bank grew and merged with banks in the Nordic region, continually expanding its presence until it decided to launder money as well. Anyways, Danske Bank's Estonian branch allegedly became a conduit for thousands of suspicious customers, exploiting weak controls to orchestrate illicit transactions totaling approximately $228 billion between 2007 and 2015. So keep in mind, guys, all of this stuff is within the regulatory system. All of these institutions are part of the regulatory system. Okay? This is fucking great. The European Commission's subsequent money laundering lawsuit seeking $228 billion cast a shadow over Danske Bank, serving as a stark reminder of the critical need for vigilance, transparency, and an unwavering commitment to an effective AML compliance program. Guys, an unwavering commitment to these programs. You know what that means? It's rules for thee and not for me. As long as I pay the fine, I get to continue to play. Next up, Nauru Bank. Yeah, everyone's like, who ever heard of this bank? Well, definitely in the States or Canada, you most likely never heard of this one. So let's dive into it. Nauru is located in Australia and is known as the smallest island country in the world. Nauru is famous for mining and has received a large payment from Australia for its mining profits, making it one of the richest nations in the world. In the 1990s, due to a corrupt government, Nauru transformed itself into a tax haven. Nauru helped Russian criminals launder an estimated $70 billion in 1998. In 2002, the U.S. Treasury designated Nauru as a money laundering state and imposed harsh sanctions to rival those settled in Iraq. Until 2005, Nauru passed AML and tax haven laws with the help of the Financial Action Task Force. Oh, wow, the FATFA. And you got to ask yourself, who elected these people into the FATFA and who decided that these people have any form of power whatsoever? And as you sit there trying to figure that out, just remember, this is how money printing creates power structures. Because when you have the power to print money, you can fund a bunch of organizations like this. And not only that, but you can also fund support for these organizations to make it seem grassroots, to make it seem like it's something that is needed in society. Anyways. All right, next. We've got BCCI, established in 1972 in Luxembourg by Pakistani businessman Afa Hassan Abedi. BCCI Banka embarked on a trajectory that would soon take a disconcerting turn. Oh, what a surprise. Despite founding its headquarters in Belgium, the bank swiftly expanded its global footprint, operating predominantly beyond the confines of the UK, yet beneath its outward growth, a shadowy underbelly of fraud and money laundering activities, totaling a staggering sum of up to $23 billion. So guys, you'll notice the pattern, okay? The pattern is this. These banks that are partners of the government, right? They work with the government. The banks that own the majority of the rails, they pay to play. I just showed it to you again, right? I've done multiple clips on how the banking system, they simply pay to play and everyone else goes to jail. That's how it works. Anyways, there is this interesting tweet here. Furthermore on this whole Tornado Cash thing that is happening. So here we go. The position taken by the prosecutors is that the act of deploying, and this is why it's very dangerous, guys, the act of deploying open source code can be criminal if criminals subsequently use that code, regardless of the original developer's lack of control. So again, this goes back to my story, right? If you decide to use any item in your household as a weapon, then technically the manufacturer of that object is liable, right? I mean, by these rules. Now, obviously, there's still the case, with Samurai, and of course, I mean, I'm not going to get into my own personal opinion of how I think that Samurai was a bit of a honeypot. But no matter what, right, all of this stuff is designed, when you look back at it, it is designed to set a precedent. It is designed to make sure that people know their place, know that if you're not part of the club, you are going to go to jail. Okay. But if you are part of the club, you get a slap on the wrist, your institution pays the fine, and life goes on. Anyways, the prosecution points out that Tornado Cash could have at least tried to put locks on that door, given that the vast majority of their users, both legitimate and criminal, were walking through it. More fundamentally, they argue that it was Pertsev's decision to put into place a system that he knew from the start would include basic elements he couldn't control. Building and deploying something unstoppable is also a decision. Lola Leets, a really great fellow Bitcoiner that comments a lot and writes a lot of very important articles about privacy. I thought that this was very important. I just picked this up this morning. So here we go from Lowell Leads. As predicted, the verdict references, and this is the verdict for Tornado Cash, it references FATFA, okay, which has no regulatory powers and operates with zero democratic oversight. That's right. So now we back up a little bit, right? A couple of years ago, we see the FATFA getting involved in the crypto space. Now, all of a sudden, this institution, right, this Financial Action Task Force is being used to help incriminate Tornado Cash. Now, if you think for a second, okay, if you think for a second that all of this isn't by design, you're very, very much mistaken. Anyways, so it is a fact of general awareness that similar services are frequently used for money laundering. They're talking about crypto. As early as 2014, the Financial Action Task Force issued a report in which it is announced that mixers are used in money laundering cryptocurrencies. The FATFA explicitly indicates that a mixer is a tool to cover up the transaction chain on the blockchain. The FATFA will recognize mixers as an indicator of money laundering and terrorist financing from 2020. So you see, it doesn't matter what the truth is. All that matters is that this organization that nobody asked to be created, nobody voted on these people. They are, like, as Lola indicated, right? These people, they have no democratic oversight, and nobody gave them any regulatory powers. But yet, here they are, and they're making rules. And not only that, but what's happening is that Tornado Cash, the creator of Tornado Cash, went into court and is now being prosecuted on the basis of FATFA's reports and findings. So this is very dangerous. It sets a very dangerous precedent going forward. As I said at the beginning of this clip, look, like a lot of times, people want to sit there and be like, oh, that's it. The government's coming after you and all of this stuff. So look, I put out this tweet I think it was the beginning of this week. The government cares a lot less about your Bitcoin than you think. Okay. And the reason why I say this is this, right? They don't care. They don't actually care about the criminal acts. They don't actually care about people's safety. Okay. What they care about is their moat, the ability to maintain their moat and their control. Okay. That is always what it's about. It never has. And the best part of it for them is that they get to hide all of that under the guise of virtue, under the guise of doing what's right. It's kind of like what we were talking about this morning in the Good Morning Bitcoin space, the greater good. It's always about the greater good. But you see, this is one of those ambiguous terms, right? That just doesn't really mean anything, and it can mean anything you want it to mean. So it kind of has no meaning, but it can also have a very specific meaning. Anyways, yeah, in no way, do I condone, quote unquote, criminal behavior. But what I will say is this: I am an advocate of personal freedom. I do believe that these institutions are simply using the ideas of trying to protect the average person, the ideas that these KYC AML laws are somehow fighting terrorism, which we already know they aren't. Less than 0.01% of illicit funds are ever recaptured through KYC AML regulations and procedures. So it's not true. It only has to do with the government's control and power. That's it. Anyways, guys, yeah, we are going to see how this continues. For the people that thought the Then They Fight You stage was over, spoiler alert, it's barely begun. I'm going to catch you guys tomorrow.